Chair.
Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, there are just a couple of clauses that I would like to talk on. One is clause 14, which is section 35 amendment, talks about adjusted taxable income, and the other one is clause 16, and this is section 39A amended, and that talks about the Commissioner may take overseas income into account. And Mr. Chair, the reason why I have a couple of questions on these clauses is because it seems that the language in the bill is a little bit arbitrary, and whenever I see the word may or might as opposed to must, I wonder under what circumstances the Commissioner is actually going to exercise his or her judgment. Now, as a number of colleagues have alluded to, Mr. Chair, there is, we need a system which is robust, and we have to ensure that liable parents are actually taking their responsibilities, meeting all their responsibilities with regard to the children they've got. So this is why, Mr. Chair, I wonder why the heading of this clause is the Commissioner may take overseas income into account. Why, under what circumstances would the Commissioner not take overseas income into account? What I actually would have liked to have seen here is the Commissioner must take overseas income into account, because if it's only a may, if it's only an arbitrary decision about whether the Commissioner will or won't, there are two implications here. The first one is it can be challenged in court. And what would happen is that what could possibly happen is a wealthy taxpayer, a liable parent, may start transferring income overseas or come up with some fancy scheme where it is deemed to be overseas income. Then he or she may actually take a case against the Commissioner to court because there is no obligation to count that overseas income as calculated for his or her liability under child support. So under what circumstances would the Commissioner look at overseas income or take overseas income into account, and under what circumstances would the Commissioner not take overseas income into account? I just think it would have been a lot clearer if there had been an obligation of the Commissioner to take overseas income into account. The second clause I would like to look at, Mr. Chair, is clause 14, and this talks about a person's adjusted taxable income. Now, the term adjusted taxable income was actually amended in 2013 to bring it in line with subpart MB of the Income Tax Act, and this relates to family scheme income, for example, and it says here income from certain trusts is included. Now again, what brings a trust into the scheme and what keeps a trust out of the scheme? Because I think we are all well aware, if we aren't, then I certainly can make people aware, because I've come across this a number of times, where people hide income in trusts. And in the past, I remember in 2008, the IRD did some work, and it had determined that about 10,000 New Zealand families were getting working for families because they weren't declaring income that was derived from their role as a beneficiary in a trust, and therefore they were entitled. We changed the law because of that, Mr. Chair, and as a consequence it made it a lot fairer, and it made it harder for people to hide income in trusts and therefore avoid their tax responsibilities. But why have we included here only certain trusts? I would have thought that if you're drawing income as a beneficiary from a trust, it is pretty clear. It doesn't matter if that trust is income you have received from a business venture, or whether it is money you have received because you've been lucky enough to inherit it, or what. It is still income. And I would have thought if we want to make the scheme fair, if we want to ensure that in fact it is the children that are benefiting out of this, we would eliminate any scheme trust income that is allowed to be hidden or not taken into consideration when determining someone's liability. And I'm unsure, the Minister may have some thoughts about this. I'm sure she has some private thoughts about this, because I'm sure, like most MPs, she would be disappointed, if not disgusted, to learn that there are actually still legislative means to hide your income and not have it, not your income, Mr. Chair, to hide income for the purposes of assessment for child support. So it's just a couple of quick questions. They are quite relevant because there are, in this day and age, there are a number of Kiwis who are earning overseas income. It is easy to structure affairs. There are a number of Kiwis, and we know this, who are deriving income from trust.
The Honourable Joe Gottlieb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to respond to a couple of the questions that have been posed by opposition members during this debate, in so much as I have sought some advice on answers to them. So in terms of serious hardship, which is a question that has been raised, it is already defined in the Act and it has been in place for a number of years. With reference to SOP 77, this ensures that the serious hardship provision can be used in a wider range of situations,